Time, we assume, is a linear progression, a constant, unyielding force that moves from the past to the present, onward into the future. But what if this belief is simply an illusion? Imagine for a moment that time does not exist as we understand it. What if every second, every tick of the clock, is just a fleeting construct of our perception, an attempt to make sense of the chaos of existence? Physics has long questioned this idea. Einstein's theory of relativity shattered the notion of time as absolute, revealing that it bends and warps with gravity. And yet, we continue to experience it as something real, something that governs our lives. But if time is merely a mental framework, does that mean our past, present, and future are illusions? And if so, does it matter? Perhaps time is not the problem. It's the way we've been taught to measure it. Time, we assume, is a linear progression, a constant, unyielding force that moves from the past to the present, onward into the future. But what if this belief is simply an illusion? Imagine for a moment that time does not exist as we understand it. What if every second, every tick of the clock, is just a fleeting construct of our perception, an attempt to make sense of the chaos of existence? Physics has long questioned this idea. Einstein's theory of relativity shattered the notion of time as absolute, revealing that it bends and warps with gravity. And yet, we continue to experience it as something real, something that governs our lives. But if time is merely a mental framework, does that mean our past, present, and future are illusions? And if so, does it matter? Perhaps time is not the problem. It's the way we've been taught to measure it. We like to believe that we make choices, decisions shaped by our desires, goals, and reason. But what if free will is nothing more than an illusion, a comforting narrative we tell ourselves to make sense of our lives? Neurological research complicates this belief. Studies have shown that our brains initiate actions before we are consciously aware of them. Benjamin Libet's experiment demonstrated that the brain's electrical impulses precede the conscious awareness of decision-making, suggesting that what we perceive as a choice might already be determined before we consciously decide. If our brains are the ones making decisions, where does our freedom lie? Are we simply puppets, controlled by neurons and subconscious impulses? And yet, we continue to experience the weight of choice in our daily lives. Our victories, regrets, and struggles all seem to arise from the decisions we think we control. So, if free will is an illusion, does that mean it doesn't matter? Perhaps it's not the truth of our autonomy that's important, but the way we experience it. As artificial intelligence evolves, it presents an ethical conundrum. Who truly holds the reins? AI systems are becoming increasingly autonomous, able to make decisions without human intervention, yet they are designed and programmed by us. At the heart of the issue lies the question of accountability. If an AI makes a decision that causes harm, who is responsible? The developers who created it, the users who employed it, or the AI itself, now a seemingly independent entity? Philosophically, the dilemma deepens when we consider the nature of control. We like to believe that our actions are governed by moral responsibility, but with AI, control becomes more fragmented. Should AI have its own ethical guidelines, or should it be entirely subservient to human values? And as AI learns and adapts, how do we ensure its decisions align with our collective ethical standards? The challenge is not merely in regulating AI. but in defining what it means to be in control, especially when the lines between human intent and machine action grow ever more blurred. As we develop these technologies, we may find ourselves asking, are we shaping AI, or is AI in some ways beginning to shape us? The universe stretches out endlessly, a vast, incomprehensible expanse that seems to dwarf our existence. In the grand scheme of time and space, we are but a fleeting moment, a mere blip on the cosmic timeline. Our planet, a tiny speck in a galaxy of billions, orbits a star that will eventually burn out, swallowed by the inevitable entropy of the universe. Yet, we live as though our lives matter, as though our actions leave an imprint on this sprawling cosmos. Science tells us that the universe is expanding, that galaxies are drifting further apart, and that even time itself might one day come to an end. And yet, in this seemingly infinite universe, we still struggle with our own purpose, our search for meaning. Are we truly insignificant, caught in the blink of time's eye? Or is there something more, something deeper that ties our existence to the vastness of the cosmos? As we reach further into the unknown, one question remains. Does the universe care that we exist, or are we merely the echoes of a cosmic accident, destined to vanish as quickly as we appeared? What if the world we experience is nothing more than a sophisticated illusion? A computer-generated simulation so advanced that it feels as real as our every breath? The simulation hypothesis suggests just that our reality, from the ground we walk on to the stars above, could be a construct, a digital dream created by a higher intelligence. This idea, once confined to science fiction, has gained traction among thinkers like philosopher Nick Bostrom, who argues that if advanced civilizations have the technology to simulate entire worlds, it's statistically likely that we are living in one. But if our universe is a simulation, what does that mean for us? Are we mere characters, coded into existence, with predetermined paths? Does our free will hold any weight in this scenario, or are we simply following a script? The implications challenge everything we know about existence, questioning the very nature of reality itself. Yet, even if we accept this hypothesis, the experience of living, of making choices, and of feeling emotions remains undeniably real to us. So, whether we are in a simulation or not, the question remains, does it matter? Or perhaps, as we delve deeper into the nature of existence, the illusion itself may hold the key to something far greater than we ever imagined. Reality, as we know it, is not a fixed entity. It is shaped by the lens through which we perceive it. Our senses provide us with information, but our minds are the ones that interpret, process, and ultimately determine what we consider to be true. But is truth universal, or does it shift based on our subjective experiences? What we accept as reality is deeply influenced by our upbringing, culture, and personal experiences. Consider how two people can witness the same event and walk away with completely different versions of what happened. Each one's truth shaped by their own biases, emotions, and mental frameworks. Science tells us that the brain constantly filters and interprets sensory data, constructing a version of the world that feels consistent and real. Yet, we know that perception can be deceiving. Optical illusions, for example, show how our senses can trick us into believing something that isn't true. So, if our perception of reality is so malleable, how can we ever be certain of the truth? The more we attempt to uncover objective reality, the more we confront the complexity of our own minds, which may be just as much a part of shaping truth as the external world itself. In the end, the truth might not be something we find outside of ourselves, but something we create through our own perception of the world. Existentialism challenges the comforting structures we've built around meaning, urging us to confront a reality where nothing is inherently purposeful. It asks, what happens when we strip away the notion that life has a preordained meaning, that there is a grand cosmic plan at play? What is left when we accept that we are born into an indifferent universe, with no inherent guide to dictate our actions or values? The answer, according to existentialist thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre, is that we are free, terrifyingly, uncomfortably free. In a world where existence precedes essence, where we are not born with a set purpose, we are forced to define ourselves through our choices and actions. But this freedom, as liberating as it may sound, comes with a profound responsibility. If there is no inherent meaning, we must create our own, and in doing so, we are forced to face the absurdity of life head-on. But perhaps therein lies the beauty of existentialism. The freedom of being nothing, of having no predetermined path, is also the freedom to become anything. In that emptiness, we find the power to shape our own existence, to live authentically, regardless of how fleeting or uncertain our time may be. And in that very freedom, we confront the deepest question: can we truly embrace the void, or will we continue to search for meaning in a world that offers none? Who are you really? This seemingly simple question uncovers layers of complexity when you begin to peel back the layers of identity, memory, and perception. The self, as we understand it, is often seen as an unchanging core, the essence that defines us from birth to death. But what if that self is an illusion? Psychological and philosophical inquiries into the nature of the self suggest that it is not a solid, fixed entity, but a fluid construct, shaped by our experiences, thoughts, and interactions. Buddhist philosophy argues that the self is a mere aggregation of fleeting thoughts, sensations, and perceptions with no permanent essence at its core. Neuroscience, too, challenges the notion of a stable self, revealing that our sense of identity is the result of neural processes that are constantly shifting. But if we are nothing more than the sum of our parts, memories, biological impulses, and environmental influences, what happens to the idea of personal responsibility or authenticity? Are we the products of our experiences, or do we have the agency to redefine ourselves? The truth may be that the self is not a singular, fixed identity, but an ongoing narrative, constantly evolving. And in this realization, perhaps we find the freedom to explore who we are, not as a static being, but as a process, ever-changing, shaped by the choices we make in the present moment. Nihilism presents a stark and unsettling view of existence, a world without inherent meaning, value, or purpose. It forces us to confront the possibility that life, in its essence, is meaningless. Without a higher power, a grand narrative, or a preordained purpose, what are we left with? In a nihilistic reality, the structures and ideologies that we cling to, morality, religion, societal norms, become nothing more than constructs, temporary solutions to an existential void. Nietzsche famously declared that God is dead, symbolizing the collapse of traditional values and belief systems, leaving humanity in a state of profound uncertainty. Without an objective meaning to guide us, we must confront the chaos of existence with no compass to direct us. This can feel overwhelming, even despairing, as we grapple with the idea that our actions, successes, and failures might ultimately be insignificant in the grand sweep of time and space. But perhaps nihilism, in its harshness, offers a peculiar form of liberation. If life is devoid of intrinsic meaning, we are free to create our own. The absence of universal purpose does not necessarily condemn us to emptiness. It offers the opportunity to define our own values, our own meaning. In a world where everything is transient and fleeting, the choice to find purpose becomes ours alone, a responsibility that, though daunting, also carries a strange kind of freedom. The butterfly effect suggests that the smallest actions can have profound, far-reaching consequences. A simple decision, a fleeting moment of choice, ripples through time, influencing outcomes in ways we may never fully understand. It's the idea that something as seemingly insignificant as the flap of a butterfly's wings could ultimately alter the course of history. This concept, rooted in chaos theory, challenges our understanding of control and fate. We often assume that the larger, more significant choices define our lives. But what if the opposite is true? What if it's the seemingly trivial decisions, the ones we make without thinking, that hold the true power to shape our futures? Consider how one random encounter could lead to a lifelong relationship. How a spur-of-the-moment decision could lead to a career change. Or how a single conversation might set a chain of events into motion that alters the course of history. It's easy to dismiss the small moments in our lives as inconsequential, but they may be the very moments that determine who we become and where we end up. The butterfly effect invites us to reconsider the weight of our actions, urging us to recognize that the future is not always shaped by the monumental, but by the subtle, often invisible forces that guide us. In this way, every choice, no matter how small, carries the potential to change everything. Time travel has long been a captivating concept in both science fiction and philosophical discourse, but with it comes a profound ethical dilemma. Should we, with the ability to alter the past, change history? The power to traverse time opens up a world of possibilities, yet also raises questions about responsibility, consequences, and the nature of free will. Imagine being able to prevent a tragic event like the assassination of a leader or the outbreak of a war. At first, such a change seems undoubtedly beneficial. But how can we predict the ripple effect of these actions? Even the smallest alteration could cascade into unpredictable outcomes, potentially causing even greater harm or creating unforeseen consequences. This is the essence of the butterfly effect, where a single change, no matter how seemingly insignificant, could disrupt the entire fabric of time. Furthermore, if we change history, do we not also alter the very foundation of who we are? Our personal identities are intrinsically tied to our experiences, to the lives we've lived and the choices we've made. But if we tamper with the past, do we risk erasing parts of ourselves? There is also the moral consideration of who gets to decide which events are worth changing. What might be perceived as an improvement for one person could devastate another. Time travel forces us to ask, is it ethical to interfere with the natural flow of history? Or does our inability to fully comprehend the consequences make us reckless in seeking to right what we perceive as wrong? Ultimately, the very nature of time travel demands that we question whether we have the wisdom, the foresight, or the moral clarity to wield such power? In the end, the question remains, even if we could change history, should we? Memory shapes our understanding of the world and ourselves, creating a bridge between past and present. Yet, how real are these memories? We trust our recollections, believing they offer an accurate representation of what has come before. But what if memory is more fluid than we realize? Neuroscience tells us that our memories are not static records, but dynamic processes subject to distortion, reconstruction, and even complete fabrication. Each time we recall a memory, it is subtly altered by new information, emotions, and external influences. This raises a profound philosophical question. If our memories are unreliable, can we truly trust our past experiences to define us? Philosophers like Augustine and Heidegger have long pondered the nature of time and existence, and how memory connects us to a past that is no longer tangible. Is the self built upon an illusion, a series of fragmented recollections that we piece together to create a coherent narrative? And if memory is not a perfect reflection of the past, does that mean our identities are equally constructed, not by the truth of our experiences, but by the stories we tell ourselves? The more we investigate memory, the more it seems that our past is not something we possess, but something we continually reconstruct, an ongoing process of creation, shaped by the very act of remembering itself. In the end, the question remains, are our memories real, or are they simply the echoes of who we wish we were? Imagine waking up in a different time, a century far removed from your own. How would your life unfold if you had been born in the 19th century, or perhaps the 15th? The world, as you know it, would be entirely different, shaped by technologies, societal norms, and values that are foreign to us today. The air would be thick with the scent of horse-drawn carriages, not the hum of electric cars. Communication would be through handwritten letters, not instant digital messages. What seems like an ordinary existence today, having access to the internet, medical advances, or global travel, would be unimaginable in that time. Your place in society would also be determined by a different set of rules. Gender, race, and class would likely carry far heavier restrictions, with opportunities available only to a select few. The pursuit of knowledge, though, would still be the same. You would still seek to understand your place in the universe, but with different tools at your disposal. And your answers would be shaped by the world view of that era. Would your intellect and curiosity be stifled, or would you find a way to thrive within the confines of that time? The more we consider this, the clearer it becomes that our current moment shapes who we are. But what if, just by being born at another time, we would be someone entirely different? Our identity forged not by personal choices, but by the very century in which we were born. This thought leads us to question, is our existence a product of time, or is time simply a backdrop to who we are and what we become? Dreams, often dismissed as mere fragments of our subconscious mind, hold a profound connection to our waking reality. We dream not just of fantastical realms, but of events, emotions, and people that mirror our daily lives, unveiling the complexities of our inner worlds. Psychology suggests that dreams are a manifestation of our unconscious desires, fears, and unresolved conflicts, offering a glimpse into the emotional and psychological landscape we may not fully understand while awake. Carl Jung, for instance, argued that dreams serve as a bridge to the unconscious mind, reflecting parts of our personality that we may suppress or deny in the conscious state. Yet dreams aren't just reflections of our emotional turmoil. They also carry symbolic meanings that can reveal hidden truths about our desires, ambitions, and even our sense of self. Consider how recurring dreams or themes emerge, often presenting unresolved issues or unresolved feelings in need of attention. Freud, too, believed that dreams are the fulfillment of repressed wishes, but they often present themselves in a disguised form to protect the conscious mind from confronting painful truths. Even in the most absurd or surreal dreams, patterns and connections to our waking experiences emerge, suggesting that our minds are constantly processing and interpreting the world around us, even when we're asleep. Dreams blur the line between reality and imagination, forcing us to question the nature of our consciousness. Are we simply living through the prism of our subjective realities, filtering everything through the lens of our dreams? If our unconscious mind can shape our perceptions while we sleep, then what does that say about the way we perceive the waking world? Ultimately, dreams invite us to explore the depths of our psyche, showing us that the line between reality and illusion is often thinner than we think. Death, the ultimate unknown, has puzzled humanity for as long as we've been capable of contemplating our own mortality. Is it truly the end, the final curtain on our existence? Or is it merely the beginning of something else, something beyond our understanding? Philosophically, death has been interpreted in myriad ways, from the complete cessation of consciousness to the belief in reincarnation or an afterlife. The ancient Greeks saw death as the end of the soul's journey, with the philosopher Socrates even suggesting that death might be a passage to a greater existence, free from the constraints of the physical world. Meanwhile, other cultures believe that death is a transition, not an ending, but a rebirth into another form of existence. Scientifically, however, the narrative is less comforting. Death marks the cessation of biological processes, and with it, the end of the mind's activity. But even in the finality of death, there are paradoxes that challenge this view. The fact that we fear it so deeply suggests that, at some level, we might instinctively sense there is more to existence than mere biology. Perhaps the fear of death isn't just about the end of life as we know it, but about the uncertainty of what follows. And yet, some argue that it is precisely the knowledge that our time is limited that gives life its meaning. Death, then, may not be an end, but a catalyst, urging us to seek purpose and connection in our fleeting moments. But if death is not the end, then what lies beyond? Is it an eternal sleep, a new beginning, or an existence entirely different from what we can imagine? The question remains unresolved, as much a mystery as life itself. Perhaps the only certainty is that, whatever lies beyond death, it is as much a part of the human experience as life itself. Death, the ultimate unknown, has puzzled humanity for as long as we've been capable of contemplating our own mortality. Is it truly the end, the final curtain on our existence? Or is it merely the beginning of something else, something beyond our understanding? Philosophically, death has been interpreted in myriad ways, from the complete cessation of consciousness to the belief in reincarnation or an afterlife. The ancient Greeks saw death as the end of the soul's journey, with the philosopher Socrates even suggesting that death might be a passage to a greater existence, free from the constraints of the physical world. Meanwhile, other cultures believe that death is a transition, not an ending, but a rebirth into another form of existence. Scientifically, however, the narrative is less comforting. Death marks the cessation of biological processes, and with it, the end of the mind's activity. But even in the finality of death, there are paradoxes that challenge this view. The fact that we fear it so. The question of life's meaning has preoccupied philosophers for millennia, and ancient thinkers offered a variety of interpretations that continue to shape our understanding today. For the Greeks, life's purpose was intertwined with virtue, wisdom, and self-knowledge. Socrates, perhaps the most influential of them all, believed that the pursuit of knowledge and understanding was the highest goal of life. Know thyself, he famously urged, suggesting that through introspection and philosophical inquiry, one could align themselves with the true essence of existence. Socrates' student, Plato, expanded on this idea, proposing that life's meaning lay in seeking the eternal truths of the forms, the ideal, immutable concepts behind the physical world. To Plato, life was a journey toward understanding these perfect forms, especially the form of the good, which would lead the soul to fulfillment. Aristotle, Plato's student, approached the question from a more practical angle. His concept of eudaimonia, often translated as flourishing or well-being, suggested that the meaning of life could be found in living a life of virtue, fulfilling one's potential, and achieving harmony between reason and action. Unlike Plato's focus on the abstract, Aristotle believed that true happiness could only be realized in the real world, through meaningful work, relationships, and the cultivation of moral character. Meanwhile, the Stoics, led by figures like Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius, offered a different interpretation. To them, the meaning of life was rooted in accepting the natural order of things, cultivating inner peace, and aligning oneself with reason and virtue. The Stoics believed that by mastering our desires and emotions, and by recognizing that many things in life are beyond our control, we could achieve tranquility and freedom from suffering. For the Stoics, the external world was fleeting and unpredictable, but one could find lasting meaning by focusing on what was within their control, namely, their thoughts, actions, and character. The ancient Indian philosophers, particularly those in the tradition of Hinduism and Buddhism, presented yet another view of life's meaning. In Hinduism, the pursuit of dharma, righteous living, artha, prosperity, karma, pleasure, and moksha, liberation from the cycle of rebirth, constituted the path to fulfillment. Life was seen as a spiritual journey where one could transcend the material world and realize union with the divine. Similarly, Buddhism taught that life's meaning was found in overcoming suffering, dukkha, through the path of enlightenment, where the ultimate goal was to attain nirvana, freedom from the cycle of birth and death. To be human is to exist with the awareness of our mortality, yet still seek meaning in the fleeting moments of life. It is a constant balancing act between our biological instincts and our capacity for reason, creativity, and emotion. We are the only creatures who ponder our existence, question our purpose, and shape our own identities. Being human means experiencing joy, pain, love, and loss, often with an understanding that these emotions are temporary, yet deeply significant. Philosophically, to be human is to wrestle with freedom and responsibility, to confront our own limitations while striving to transcend them. We build connections, share stories, and create art, all in an effort to make sense of a world that often feels chaotic. In the end, what it means to be human is not just about survival, but about creating meaning in a world that does not inherently provide it. The limits of human knowledge are a fundamental question in both philosophy and science. While we have made immense strides in understanding the world around us, there remains a vast expanse of the unknown. The quest for knowledge often reveals more questions than answers, suggesting that some truths may forever elude us. Philosophers like Immanuel Kant argued that there are inherent limits to human perception. Our minds are shaped by categories of understanding that may never fully grasp the true nature of reality. Science, too, faces its own boundaries, with some phenomena, like consciousness or the origins of the universe, remaining beyond our current understanding. Even if we continue to advance, there may always be mysteries too complex or too distant for us to comprehend. Perhaps the very nature of knowledge is not about knowing everything, but about accepting that some things are meant to remain unknown, challenging us to continue seeking without ever reaching a final answer. The problem of evil has perplexed philosophers and theologians for centuries. If a benevolent, all-powerful God exists, why does suffering persist in the world? This question challenges the very nature of divine justice and human existence. Some argue that evil is a necessary counterpart to free will. Without the possibility of suffering, we would lack true agency, unable to choose goodness or make meaningful decisions. Others, like the ancient Greek philosopher Epicurus, questioned whether a benevolent God could truly exist in a world full of pain and suffering. Theologians have proposed various solutions. Some claim that suffering is a test, an opportunity for spiritual growth, or a result of human sin. But these explanations often fail to comfort those who endure suffering that seems arbitrary or excessive. Ultimately, the problem of evil may lie in the limits of human understanding. Perhaps suffering, like good, is part of a greater plan, even if we cannot fully grasp it. Happiness is often seen as a key component of a meaningful life, yet its relationship with meaning is complex. While some philosophers argue that happiness is the ultimate goal of human existence, others suggest that it's not happiness itself, but the pursuit of something deeper that gives life meaning. Aristotle, for instance, believed that true happiness comes from living a life of virtue and fulfilling one's potential, a state he called eudaimonia. To him, happiness wasn't a fleeting emotional state, but the result of living in accordance with reason and purpose. On the other hand, existentialist thinkers like Sartre and Camus argued that happiness alone can't provide meaning in an indifferent universe. Instead, meaning must be created through individual choices and actions, regardless of whether they lead to happiness. In the end, while happiness is important, it may be our pursuit of meaning, whether through relationships, work, or personal growth, that brings true fulfillment. To live authentically is to align one's actions, beliefs, and values with one's true self, free from societal expectations or external pressures. It's about embracing vulnerability, acknowledging one's flaws, and living in accordance with personal truths, even when those truths may not fit the norms. Philosophers like Jean-Paul Sartre emphasized the importance of creating one's own identity rather than adhering to prescribed roles. To live authentically one must confront the existential reality that life has no inherent meaning, and thus meaning must be self-constructed. This process involves making choices that reflect personal desires and aspirations, without fear of judgment or failure. However, authenticity isn't a one-time achievement, but a continuous journey where individuals must regularly reassess their motivations and the ways they interact with the world. In living authentically, there is freedom, but also responsibility, as it requires a willingness to accept the consequences of one's choices and actions. The concept of fate versus free will has long been a topic of philosophical debate. Fate suggests that our lives are predestined, governed by forces beyond our control, whether by divine will, cosmic determinism, or an unalterable chain of events. In this view, every decision and event is part of a larger plan, and our sense of choice is an illusion. Free will, on the other hand, argues that we have the power to make choices independent of any preordained path. It allows for personal agency, moral responsibility, and the belief that we can shape our own destiny. Philosophers like Aristotle supported the idea of free will, asserting that humans can act in accordance with reason. Meanwhile, existential thinkers like Sartre believed that we are condemned to freedom, as we alone are responsible for creating meaning in a world devoid of inherent purpose. Ultimately, the tension between fate and free will may lie not in choosing one over the other, but in recognizing the delicate balance between the forces that shape us and the choices we make. The question of whether morality is objective or subjective has been a central issue in philosophy. Objective morality posits that certain moral principles exist independently of human beliefs or feelings, suggesting that some actions are right or wrong, regardless of individual opinions or cultural norms. This view is often associated with moral realism, which argues that moral facts are as real and unchanging as physical facts. Philosophers like Immanuel Kant supported objective morality, asserting that moral duties are derived from rationality and universal principles, such as the categorical imperative. On the other hand, subjective morality suggests that moral judgments are contingent upon personal preferences, cultural contexts, or societal norms. From this perspective, what is right or wrong varies across individuals and societies, and there are no absolute moral truths. Ethical relativism supports this view, highlighting the diversity of moral practices across cultures. Ultimately, whether morality is objective or subjective may depend on one's philosophical stance, as both perspectives raise questions about the nature of moral truths and how they should be understood in a complex, diverse world. If you could control your own destiny, the boundaries of possibility would seem limitless. Every decision, every choice, would become a direct thread in weaving the future you envision. The idea of fate, a force that has always felt beyond our grasp, would dissolve, and in its place, absolute freedom would reign. But with this power comes responsibility, a weight that forces us to confront the question of what kind of life we truly want. If we could shape every outcome, would we remain guided by virtue, or would our desires and impulses take the lead? In a world where nothing is left to chance, would the richness of uncertainty, the thrill of the unknown, be lost? The beauty of life may lie not in having absolute control, but in navigating the unpredictable paths it offers. While controlling our destiny sounds liberating, it might strip away the very essence of what makes life meaningful, its spontaneity and surprises. The ethics of immortality presents a complex dilemma. If we had the power to live forever, should we? On one hand, immortality could offer boundless opportunities for knowledge, growth, and the exploration of the universe. It might allow us to perfect skills, deepen relationships, and contribute to society without the constraints of time. However, the prospect of eternal life raises profound ethical concerns. Would immortality lead to a loss of meaning in life? If every day stretches on indefinitely, would we still value our experiences, relationships, and achievements, or would they become hollow in their repetition? Moreover, the issue of resource distribution and overpopulation arises. If only a select few could live forever, how would society handle the imbalance? The moral questions also touch on the nature of suffering. While immortality could end death, it could also perpetuate pain, loss, and existential boredom. Ultimately, the question is not just whether we should live forever, but whether we would truly want to, given the profound consequences it could have on the human experience. The paradox of choice suggests that while having options should empower us, an excess of choices can actually overwhelm and paralyze us. In a world where the number of decisions, big and small, continually expands, we often find ourselves drowning in possibilities, struggling to make choices that feel truly satisfying. Psychological studies show that too many options can lead to anxiety, regret, and even dissatisfaction, as we become fixated on the potential outcomes of the choices we didn't make. Instead of enhancing our freedom, this abundance of options often robs us of it, leaving us feeling trapped in indecision. Paradoxically, the more choices we have, the more we crave simplicity, the very thing we seem to resist in our consumer-driven society. The irony is clear. The pursuit of freedom through choice may, in fact, limit our true autonomy by overwhelming our capacity to decide. In the end, freedom may not lie in endless options, but in learning to embrace the choices that truly matter. Suffering, though often seen as something to avoid, plays an integral role in the human experience. It is through hardship that we are forced to confront our limitations, our vulnerabilities, and the fragility of life itself. Philosophers like Nietzsche argued that suffering is essential for growth, suggesting that it is through overcoming pain and adversity that we develop strength, resilience, and wisdom. Without suffering, we might lack the capacity to truly appreciate joy, peace, and success. Moreover, suffering often leads to self-reflection and a deeper understanding of the world, pushing us to question our values and purpose. While it can feel unbearable at times, it also connects us to the shared human condition, fostering empathy and compassion for others. In this way, suffering, though painful, is not a mere burden. It is a catalyst for personal transformation and a means through which we find deeper meaning in life. The nature of God has been a central question in philosophy and theology, with diverse interpretations across different cultures and religions. In many monotheistic traditions, God is understood as a transcendent, all-powerful, and all-knowing being who created the universe and governs its order. For example, in Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, God is often seen as a personal deity, deeply involved in the affairs of the world, yet beyond human comprehension. Philosophers like Thomas Aquinas argued that God is both immanent and transcendent, a being whose existence is necessary for the order and existence of everything else. However, other perspectives challenge the traditional conception of God. Some see God not as a personal entity, but as an impersonal force or principle that underlies the cosmos, as in certain strands of Eastern philosophy, such as Taoism or pantheism. In these views, God is the unifying force of existence, not separate from the world, but inherent in everything. The nature of God also raises profound questions about morality, the problem of evil, and free will. If God is all-powerful and benevolent, why does evil exist in the world? This paradox has led to numerous theological debates and responses. Ultimately, the nature of God remains a deeply personal and often mysterious concept, shaped by individual beliefs, religious doctrines, and philosophical inquiry. The trolley problem presents a stark moral dilemma. Should one sacrifice one life to save many others? Imagine a runaway trolley heading toward 5 people tied to the tracks, unable to move. You stand beside a lever that can divert the trolley onto another track, where it will kill 1 person. Do you pull the lever, knowingly causing the death of 1 to save 5? Or do you refrain, allowing the trolley to take its natural course and kill 5? This thought experiment challenges our moral intuitions. Utilitarianism, which seeks the greatest good for the greatest number, would argue in favor of pulling the lever, prioritizing the collective well-being over the individual. However, deontological ethics, championed by Kant, holds that actions should adhere to moral rules, regardless of outcomes. In this view, pulling the lever would be morally wrong because it involves actively causing harm. The trolley problem doesn't provide clear answers. Instead, it exposes the tension between different ethical frameworks and forces us to confront the complexity of moral decision-making in life and death situations. Language is not just a tool for communication. It profoundly shapes the way we perceive and understand the world. The Sapir-Whorf hypothesis argues that the structure and vocabulary of a language influence thought, suggesting that different languages might create different cognitive realities. For example, cultures with multiple words for a single concept, like color, perceive and categorize that concept more intricately. In contrast, languages with fewer distinctions may limit the way speakers experience those concepts. Language also affects how we think about time, space, and relationships. Some languages, like Mandarin, treat time as cyclical, while English sees it as linear, which can influence how speakers perceive the passage of time. The use of gendered language can shape attitudes toward gender roles and equality, subtly reinforcing societal norms. In essence, language doesn't merely reflect thought, it can actively shape our thoughts, influencing how we categorize experiences and interact with the world around us. Thus, the words we choose to use define not just communication, but the very structure of our thinking. Plato's allegory of the cave presents a profound reflection on the nature of reality and human perception. In this allegory, prisoners are chained inside a dark cave, only able to see shadows cast on a wall by objects behind them. These shadows are all they know of the world. One prisoner is freed and exposed to the outside world, where he experiences the sun and the true forms of objects. Initially, the light blinds him, but gradually he begins to understand the difference between the shadows and the real world. When he returns to the cave to share his discoveries, the other prisoners reject his claims. unable to comprehend a reality beyond their limited experience. This allegory challenges the idea of knowledge and perception, suggesting that most of us live in a state of ignorance, perceiving only a fraction of the truth. It encourages us to question the limits of our understanding and consider that what we believe to be real may only be a shadow of a deeper truth. Ultimately, it speaks to the transformative power of knowledge, the difficulty of awakening to a broader reality, and the resistance people often have to change their established beliefs. Heidegger's exploration of being delves into one of the most fundamental philosophical questions. What does it mean to be? In his seminal work, Being and Time, Heidegger argued that modern philosophy has overlooked the concept of being, taking it for granted rather than truly questioning its nature. For Heidegger, being is not merely a characteristic of objects or beings, but the very foundation of existence itself. To understand what it means to be, one must first understand Dasein, a German term Heidegger uses to refer to human existence. Dasein, which literally means being there, highlights our awareness of our own being and our place in the world. Heidegger believes that human beings are defined by their relationship with time and death. Our awareness of our mortality shapes our experience, driving us to confront the question of our existence in an authentic way. Rather than seeing being as an abstract concept, Heidegger insists that it is something we experience through our actions, choices, and engagement with the world. To be, in Heidegger's view, is to exist authentically, embracing the fact that we are finite, and in doing so, creating meaning in our lives. This focus on being urges us to engage with our existence not passively, but actively, questioning our place in the world and how we relate to time, death, and others. If we could stop time, the world would become an eerie, frozen tableau where every movement and sound would cease to exist, leaving only us and our thoughts. At first, the prospect of infinite time might seem exhilarating, offering endless opportunities for exploration, reflection, and control. We could examine the world in its minutest detail, move through places unobserved, or experience moments without the pressure of time's relentless march. However, such power could quickly become a burden. Without time's flow, there would be no change, no progress, and no way to distinguish moments from one another. Relationships, too, would lose their meaning, as human connection is bound by the shared experience of time. In a world without time, growth and decay would be frozen, and the essence of what it means to live, our interactions, achievements, and challenges, would be nullified. Ultimately, the ability to stop time might reveal that it is time itself, with its passing and its inevitable end, that gives our lives meaning and urgency. Without it, existence could become an endless, unfulfilled pause. The ethics of technology centers around a profound question. Can we truly control the creations we unleash into the world? As technology advances at a rapid pace, we increasingly find ourselves at the mercy of inventions that outstrip our ability to predict their consequences. While technologies like artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, and automation hold immense potential to improve lives, they also introduce complex ethical dilemmas. Can we regulate technologies to ensure they are used for the greater good? Once a technology is developed, its applications often surpass initial intentions, leading to unintended consequences as seen in the rise of social media and surveillance systems. This raises concerns about autonomy, privacy, and the power of corporations and governments. Moreover, the creators of these technologies may not fully understand the social and moral implications of their inventions. In this sense, technology poses a paradox. The more control we seek over it, the more it seems to shape and control us. Ultimately, the challenge lies in navigating the delicate balance between innovation and responsibility, ensuring that we wield technology in ways that reflect our values, not just our capabilities. The concept of the eternal return, as proposed by Friedrich Nietzsche, challenges us with a profound question. If you had to live your life over and over again, exactly as it is, would you be content with it? Nietzsche suggests that the idea of repeating every moment eternally is both a test and a reflection of how we live our lives. If we cannot embrace our lives fully, with all their joys and suffering, then we have not lived authentically. The eternal return forces us to confront the weight of our choices, actions, and regrets, compelling us to live in a way that we would be willing to repeat indefinitely. It asks us whether we live with enough passion, purpose, and meaning to make every moment feel valuable. The idea is unsettling, for it removes the possibility of escape from our mistakes or misgivings. But in this challenge, it also invites a radical freedom to choose a life worth living, one that we would embrace even in its repetitions. Would we, in the face of eternity, still choose the same path? Or would we seek a new, more meaningful direction? The concept of the eternal return, as proposed by Friedrich Nietzsche, challenges us with a profound question. If you had to live your life over and over again, exactly as it is, would you be content with it? Nietzsche suggests that the idea of repeating the illusion of control is the belief that we have more power over our lives and circumstances than we actually do. From a young age, we are taught to believe that through hard work, decisions, and perseverance, we can shape our destinies. Yet life is full of unpredictable forces, chance, the actions of others, societal constraints that remain beyond our control. While we may steer our lives in certain directions, the outcome is never entirely in our hands. Psychology shows that people often overestimate their ability to control outcomes, a phenomenon known as locus of control. The more we cling to this illusion, the more we struggle with frustration and anxiety when things don't go as planned. But acknowledging the limits of our control doesn't mean we should resign ourselves to passivity. Rather, it invites us to focus on what we can influence, our responses, attitudes, and choices, while accepting that some things are simply beyond our reach. In this acceptance, we might find a deeper, more grounded sense of power. David Hume's problem of induction challenges the very foundation of how we know the world. Induction, the process by which we draw general conclusions from specific observations, is central to scientific reasoning and everyday life. For example, if we observe the sun rising every day, we infer that it will rise again tomorrow. However, Hume argues that this reasoning is not logically justifiable. Just because the sun has risen every day in the past does not guarantee it will rise again, as there is no logical connection between past and future events. Hume's skepticism reveals a deeper issue. Our experiences, while seemingly reliable, cannot provide certain knowledge about the future. This casts doubt on the very basis of empirical science, which relies on induction. So, Can we trust our experiences? According to Hume, we must accept that our knowledge is always tentative, based on habit and probability rather than certainty. In this way, our understanding of the world, while practical, remains fundamentally uncertain. David Hume's problem of induction challenges the very foundation of how we know the world. Induction, the process by which we draw general conclusions from specific observations, is central to scientific reasoning and everyday life. For example, if we observe the sun rising every day, we infer that it will rise again tomorrow. However, Hume argues that this reasoning is not logically justifiable. Just because the sun has risen every day in the past does not guarantee it will rise again, as there is no logical connection between past and future events. Hume's skepticism reveals a deeper issue. Our experiences, while seemingly reliable, cannot provide certain knowledge about the future. This casts doubt on the very basis of empirical science, which relies on induction. So, can we trust our experiences? According to Hume, we must accept that our knowledge is always tentative, based on habit and probability rather than certainty. In this way, our understanding of the world, while practical, remains fundamentally uncertain. Solipsism is the philosophical idea that only one's own mind is certain to exist, and that the external world, including other people, may only be projections of one's own consciousness. According to solipsism, everything we experience, the world around us, the people we interact with, and even the sensations we feel, could be nothing more than constructs of our mind. This radical view challenges the very nature of reality, suggesting that we cannot truly know if anything exists outside our perception. Solipsism raises unsettling questions about the reliability of our senses and the existence of others. If we can't directly access the minds of others, how can we be sure they are real and not just products of our imagination? While most reject solipsism due to its paradoxical and self-centered nature, it serves as a powerful reminder of the limits of human knowledge and perception. The question remains, can we ever truly know anything beyond our own consciousness, or is reality merely a projection of our mind? The question of whether morality is based on reason or emotion has sparked intense philosophical debate for centuries. On one side, reason-based moral theories, like those of Immanuel Kant, argue that moral principles should be grounded in rational thought and universal rules. According to Kant, we should act according to maxims that could be universally applied, independent of personal desires or emotional impulses. For reason-based ethics, morality is objective and can be discovered through logical reasoning and reflection. In contrast, emotion-based moral theories suggest that our feelings are central to moral decision-making. Figures like David Hume argued that reason alone cannot motivate us to act morally. Rather, it is our emotions, such as empathy, compassion, or outrage, that guide our moral choices. Hume believed that moral judgments arise from our emotional responses to the suffering or well-being of others, highlighting the importance of human feelings in moral life. Many contemporary thinkers acknowledge that morality likely involves both reason and emotion. Reason can help us analyze complex situations and determine what actions are morally right, while emotion gives us the motivation to act with compassion and empathy. Ultimately, morality may not be fully reducible to either reason or emotion, but instead may emerge from the interplay between both. The nature of truth is one of the most fundamental and debated concepts in philosophy. At its core, truth is generally understood as the state of being in accord with fact or reality. However, the nature of how we arrive at truth and what constitutes truth varies significantly across different philosophical frameworks. The correspondence theory of truth, one of the oldest and most widely accepted views, holds that a statement is true if it corresponds to the way things are in the world. For example, the statement "the sky is blue" is true if, in reality, the sky is indeed blue. Another prominent view is the coherence theory of truth, which suggests that truth is a matter of coherence within a set of beliefs or propositions. A belief is true if it is logically consistent with other beliefs we hold, forming a coherent system of understanding. The pragmatic theory of truth, associated with philosophers like William James and Charles Peirce, argues that truth is what works in practice. A belief or proposition is considered true if it leads to successful action or useful outcomes when applied in real life. Postmodernist views challenge the idea of absolute truth, arguing that truth is subjective and can vary depending on perspective, culture, or language. According to this view, truths are socially constructed and may not be universally applicable. Ultimately, the nature of truth remains elusive, and the ongoing philosophical debate reflects the complexity of understanding reality, language, and human perception. Truth may not be a single fixed entity, but a multifaceted concept that is shaped by context, experience, and interpretation. Socrates' famous declaration that I know nothing reflects a profound and humble approach to wisdom. Far from being an admission of ignorance, it reveals a deeper understanding of the limitations of human knowledge. For Socrates, true wisdom lies not in possessing vast amounts of information, but in recognizing the boundaries of one's knowledge. By acknowledging his ignorance, Socrates was able to open himself to genuine learning and questioning. This approach, known as the Socratic method, involves asking probing questions to challenge assumptions and stimulate critical thinking, rather than providing answers. Socrates believed that knowledge begins with recognizing our own lack of knowledge, which frees us from the arrogance of false certainty. His wisdom was in his constant pursuit of truth, always aware that no matter how much one learns, there is always more to understand. In essence, to know nothing is not a denial of wisdom, but an invitation to perpetual inquiry and intellectual humility. The concept of nothingness in philosophy explores the absence of being, existence, or meaning. In existentialism, particularly in the works of Jean-Paul Sartre and Martin Heidegger, nothingness plays a central role in understanding human existence. Sartre famously described nothingness as the negation that defines consciousness. He argued that human beings are not defined by any essential nature, but by what they choose to become, thus creating a void or nothingness that allows for freedom and possibility. This nothingness is both a source of anxiety and a foundation for individual meaning-making. Heidegger, on the other hand, saw nothingness as a confrontation with the finitude of life. For him, facing nothingness, especially in the form of death, allows individuals to live authentically, as it reveals the true nature of existence and the temporality of life. In a more metaphysical sense, the concept of nothingness challenges our understanding of being and existence itself. What does it mean for something to not exist? How can we even conceive of nothing. Philosophically, nothingness forces us to reconsider the nature of reality, the limits of human perception, and the very fabric of being, as it remains an elusive, paradoxical concept, present in its absence. The idea of the universe as a giant machine is a concept that has been explored throughout philosophy and science. This mechanistic view suggests that the universe operates like a well-designed, predictable machine, governed by laws of nature and cause and effect relationships. The roots of this idea can be traced back to the work of early philosophers like René Descartes, who viewed the universe as a mechanical system operating according to mathematical principles. Descartes compared the body and even the universe itself to a machine, driven by precise deterministic forces. In the realm of modern science, this view is echoed in the Newtonian model of the universe, where the cosmos is seen as a vast clockwork system, with each part functioning according to fixed natural laws. However, with the advent of quantum mechanics and the theory of relativity, this image of a rigidly predictable universe has been challenged. The universe, it seems, is not always mechanistic in the traditional sense. Quantum physics reveals an underlying randomness and uncertainty, suggesting that not everything operates on deterministic principles. Philosophically, seeing the universe as a machine raises questions about free will, consciousness, and the nature of life itself. If the universe is just a machine, are we merely complex configurations of matter? Or is there something more, something beyond mechanical processes, that makes us conscious beings with agency? In this sense, the question of whether the universe is merely a machine leads us to confront the limits of scientific explanation and our understanding of existence itself. The role of consciousness in the universe is a profound and complex question that touches on philosophy, science, and metaphysics. Consciousness allows us to be aware of our own existence, our thoughts, and our surroundings, and it serves as the lens through which we interpret the world. Some thinkers, like René Descartes, believed consciousness is central to understanding what it means to be human, famously stating, "Cogito, ergo sum," I think, therefore I am. This suggests that consciousness is not only essential for self-awareness, but also the foundation of reality itself. In the broader context of the universe, the role of consciousness becomes even more mysterious. Is consciousness an emergent property of complex biological systems, like the human brain, or is it a fundamental aspect of reality, embedded in the very fabric of existence? Some proponents of panpsychism, such as philosopher Galen Strawson, argue that consciousness may be a basic feature of the universe, existing in varying degrees in all matter, from atoms to galaxies. This suggests that consciousness is not confined to humans or animals, but is interwoven with the material world. The philosophy of time delves into the nature of time itself, exploring the relationship between the past, present, and future, and questioning whether time is a real, objective feature of the universe or merely a human construct. One of the central debates in the philosophy of time is whether time is absolute or relative. Isaac Newton argued for a view of absolute time, where time flows uniformly, independent of events or human experience. In contrast, Albert Einstein's theory of relativity suggests that time is relative, influenced by the speed and gravity of objects, which means that time is not a fixed backdrop, but part of the dynamic fabric of the universe. Another key question is whether the past, present, and future exist in the same way. In the eternalism view, all points in time, past, present, and future, are equally real, and the passage of time is an illusion. This stands in contrast to presentism, which holds that only the present moment is real, and both the past and future are unreal or non-existent. The philosophy of time also touches on human experience. Our perception of time often seems to flow from the past, through the present, to the future. But is this a true reflection of how time operates, or is it merely how we perceive it? Is time merely a measurement of change, or does it have an inherent quality that governs existence? Furthermore, the future remains unknown and uncertain, while the past is fixed and immutable, raising existential questions about free will, destiny, and the possibility of changing the course of time. Ultimately, the philosophy of time challenges us to consider the nature of reality itself, the limits of human perception, and the role that time plays in shaping the way we live, think, and understand the universe. Time, in all its complexity, remains one of the most elusive and fascinating aspects of existence. The paradox of personal identity explores the question of what makes us the same person over time, despite changes in our bodies, minds, and experiences. Philosophers have long debated whether identity is based on continuity of the body, the mind, or something else entirely. One of the most famous formulations of this issue is the ship of Theseus paradox. If a ship has all of its parts replaced, is it still the same ship? Applied to personal identity, this raises the question: if we change physically and psychologically over time, from our cells to our memories, are we still the same person? John Locke, in the 17th century, proposed that personal identity is based on psychological continuity. According to Locke, we remain the same person as long as we retain the same consciousness and memories, even if our physical bodies change. This view suggests that identity is tied to the mind rather than the body, meaning that as long as we remember our past experiences, we are the same person, even if our physical selves are radically altered. However, this theory faces challenges, such as the problem of memory distortion or loss. What happens if we forget key parts of our life or develop amnesia? Are we still the same person then? Additionally, advancements in neuroscience and the philosophy of the brain argue that our identity might be closely tied to the physical state of our brain, which challenges the notion of identity as purely psychological. To be free is often considered one of the most fundamental aspirations of human existence, yet its true meaning is complex and multifaceted. At its core, freedom is the ability to act, think, and choose without undue constraint. However, the nature of this freedom varies depending on philosophical, social, and personal perspectives. From a political standpoint, freedom often refers to the absence of external constraints, such as tyranny or oppression. This view emphasizes political liberties, freedom of speech, freedom of choice, and the right to live without fear of unjust authority. For thinkers like John Locke and Jean-Jacques Rousseau, freedom is tied to the concept of autonomy and the protection of individual rights within a social contract. Philosophically, the idea of freedom extends into deeper questions about human nature and existence. Existentialists like Jean-Paul Sartre argue that freedom is inherent in human consciousness, but it comes with a burden, the responsibility for one's choices. According to Sartre, freedom isn't just about external liberty, but also the freedom to define oneself through actions, even in a world devoid of inherent meaning. In this sense, freedom can be an existential struggle, as we must constantly create our essence through our decisions, without any preordained guide. On the other hand, determinists challenge the notion of absolute freedom. They argue that every action and decision is shaped by prior causes, genetics, environment, and past experiences, which means that true freedom is an illusion. If our choices are determined by factors beyond our control, can we truly be free? The question of whether artificial intelligence, AI, can ever be truly conscious touches on the nature of consciousness itself, a deeply complex and largely mysterious phenomenon. Consciousness, in humans, involves not only awareness of the self, but also subjective experiences, emotions, and a sense of being. AI, however, is fundamentally different in its structure. It processes information and performs tasks based on algorithms and data without any inherent sense of self or subjective experience. From a computational standpoint, AI can simulate behaviors that appear conscious, like learning, problem-solving, and emotional recognition. However, these are driven by pre-programmed algorithms or machine learning models, not an inner awareness. While AI can be designed to replicate certain cognitive functions, there's no evidence to suggest that it experiences emotions or thoughts the way humans do. Philosophers like John Searle have posited that even if AI appears conscious, it could be a form of synthetic consciousness that lacks true subjective experience. His famous Chinese room argument illustrates the difference between understanding a language and merely manipulating symbols based on rules. AI might simulate intelligence, but without the internal experience of understanding, it remains fundamentally different from human consciousness. Imagine you're scrolling through your favorite news app. You come across an article that aligns perfectly with your views. You nod in agreement, perhaps even share it with friends. Then, you see another piece presenting an opposing perspective. You skim it briefly, maybe dismiss it as biased or uninformed and move on. This subtle, almost automatic behavior is a manifestation of confirmation bias, a cognitive tendency where we favor information that confirms our existing beliefs and ignore or discount information that challenges them. This bias isn't just about what we read, it permeates how we interpret and recall information. For instance, if you believe that a particular diet is the healthiest, you're more likely to remember success stories supporting that diet and forget or rationalize stories that contradict it. This selective memory reinforces your belief, creating a self-sustaining loop. The roots of confirmation bias run deep. Psychologist Peter Wayson's experiments in the 1960s shed light on this phenomenon. In one study, participants were given a sequence of numbers, 2, 4, 6, and asked to determine the rule governing the sequence. Most assumed the rule was increasing by 2, and tested sequences like 8, 10, 12. They rarely considered sequences that might disprove their hypothesis, such as 2, 3, 4. In reality, the rule was simply any ascending sequence. This experiment highlighted our propensity to seek confirmation rather than refutation. In everyday life, confirmation bias can have significant consequences. Consider the realm of politics. Individuals often consume media that aligns with their ideological leanings, creating echo chambers where opposing viewpoints are seldom encountered. This environment reinforces existing beliefs and can lead to increased polarization. as people become more entrenched in their views. The medical field isn't immune either. A doctor might form an initial diagnosis based on a patient's symptoms, and then unconsciously focus on evidence supporting that diagnosis, overlooking signs that point to alternative explanations. This can lead to misdiagnoses and ineffective treatments. In the legal system, confirmation bias can influence investigations. Once a suspect is identified, investigators might focus on evidence that confirms their guilt, disregarding exculpatory evidence. This tunnel vision can result in wrongful convictions, as has been documented in numerous cases. Social interactions are also affected. If you believe a colleague dislikes you, you're more likely to interpret their neutral actions as negative, reinforcing your belief. This can strain relationships and create unnecessary tension. Even our hobbies aren't safe. Sports fans often perceive referees as biased against their team, especially after unfavorable calls. This perception persists despite evidence to the contrary, fueled by the desire to protect the team's image and our emotional investment in it. Confirmation bias also plays a role in perpetuating stereotypes. If someone believes that a particular group is untrustworthy, they'll notice and remember instances that support this belief while ignoring instances that contradict it. This selective perception reinforces prejudiced views and hinders social cohesion. In the digital age, algorithms exacerbate confirmation bias. Social media platforms curate content based on our previous interactions, showing us more of what we like and less of what we don't. This personalization creates filter bubbles, limiting exposure to diverse perspectives and reinforcing existing beliefs. Recognizing confirmation bias is the first step toward mitigating its effects. Actively seeking out opposing viewpoints, engaging in open-minded discussions, and critically evaluating information can help. In professional settings, implementing structured decision-making processes and encouraging dissenting opinions can counteract the bias. Educational initiatives that promote critical thinking and media literacy are also vital. Teaching individuals to question sources, evaluate evidence, and consider alternative viewpoints fosters a more informed and less biased populace. In conclusion, confirmation bias is a pervasive cognitive tendency that influences how we process information, make decisions, and interact with others. By acknowledging its presence and actively working to counteract it, we can make more balanced decisions, foster healthier relationships, and contribute to a more open and understanding society. Imagine you're watching the evening news. The anchor reports a recent shark attack at a popular beach. The footage is dramatic, showing emergency responders and distressed witnesses. The next day, you reconsider your plans to go swimming, thinking, shark attacks are becoming more common. But are they? Statistically, shark attacks are exceedingly rare. Yet, the vividness of the report makes the danger feel immediate and probable. This is the availability heuristic at work, a mental shortcut where we judge the likelihood of events based on how easily examples come to mind. Our brains are wired to prioritize information that's readily accessible. When making decisions, we often rely on immediate examples rather than comprehensive data. This tendency helps us navigate daily life efficiently, but can lead to skewed perceptions. For instance, after hearing about a plane crash, some individuals might develop a fear of flying, despite air travel being one of the safest modes of transportation. The crash, being a recent and emotionally charged event, dominates their thoughts, making flying seem riskier than it is. Consider the case of lottery winners. Media coverage often highlights their stories, showcasing sudden wealth and transformed lives. These narratives are compelling and memorable. As a result, people might overestimate their chances of winning and spend more on lottery tickets, ignoring the overwhelming odds against them. The availability heuristic causes them to focus on the few success stories they recall, rather than the countless others who didn't win. In the realm of health, this bias can influence our perceptions of disease prevalence. Suppose a celebrity is diagnosed with a rare illness, and it's widely reported. Suddenly, many individuals become concerned about that disease, seeking medical tests or altering their lifestyles, even if their actual risk remains low. The disease feels more common because it's top of mind, not because its incidence has increased. The availability heuristic also plays a role in our social judgments. If someone frequently hears about crimes committed by a particular group, they might develop biased views, believing that group is more prone to criminal behavior. This perception isn't based on comprehensive crime statistics, but on the frequency and intensity of the reports they've encountered. Such biases can perpetuate stereotypes and fuel discrimination. In financial markets, investors might make decisions based on recent trends. If a particular stock has been performing well and is frequently discussed in the media, investors might flock to it, believing its success will continue. They recall its recent performance easily and assume it's a safe bet, potentially ignoring underlying risks or broader market indicators. Our personal experiences further shape this bias. If someone has been bitten by a dog, they might perceive dogs as dangerous, even if most dogs are friendly. The memory of the bite is vivid and easily recalled, influencing their judgment in future encounters with dogs. The media's role in amplifying the availability heuristic is significant. Sensational stories, dramatic visuals, and emotional narratives are more likely to be reported and remembered. This focus can distort public perception, making rare events seem common, and common events seem rare. For example, extensive coverage of terrorist attacks can lead individuals to overestimate their frequency, fostering unnecessary fear and anxiety. To mitigate the effects of the availability heuristic, it's essential to seek out comprehensive data and diverse perspectives. When evaluating risks or making decisions, consider consulting reliable statistics and expert analyses. Being aware of this cognitive bias allows us to question our initial impressions and strive for more balanced judgments. In our daily lives, recognizing the influence of the availability heuristic can lead to better decision-making. Whether it's assessing personal risks, making investments, or forming opinions about social issues, understanding that our judgments are often based on readily available information, not necessarily accurate or representative, can help us approach situations more thoughtfully. Ultimately, while the availability heuristic serves as a useful mental shortcut, enabling quick decisions in a complex world, it's crucial to remain vigilant about its potential to mislead. By acknowledging its presence and actively seeking out comprehensive information, we can make more informed choices and foster a more accurate understanding of the world around us. Imagine you're shopping for a new watch. The first one you see is priced at $1,200. It's sleek, luxurious, and way beyond your budget. Then you spot another watch, similar in style, priced at $300. Suddenly, the second watch seems like a bargain, even though it's still a significant expense. This scenario illustrates the anchoring bias, a cognitive bias where the first piece of information we receive, the anchor, heavily influences our subsequent judgments and decisions. Anchoring bias is pervasive in our daily lives. It affects how we perceive value, make estimates, and even form opinions. For instance, in salary negotiations, the initial offer often sets the tone for the entire discussion. If a candidate expects a salary of $70,000, but the employer starts with an offer of $60,000, the final agreed-upon salary is likely to hover around the anchor, even if the candidate's market value is higher. This bias isn't limited to numbers. It also influences our perceptions and judgments. Consider a courtroom scenario where a prosecutor suggests a lengthy sentence for a defendant. Even if the defense presents compelling arguments for leniency, the judge's final decision may still be swayed by the initial anchor set by the prosecution. Retailers and marketers are well aware of anchoring bias and often exploit it to influence consumer behavior. A common tactic is to display a high-priced item alongside a more moderately priced one. The expensive item serves as an anchor, making the other seem more affordable by comparison. This strategy is evident in restaurants that list a premium dish at the top of the menu to make other items appear reasonably priced. Anchoring bias also affects our self-perception and personal goals. If we set an initial goal to lose 10 pounds, that number becomes our reference point. Even if we later realize that a 15-pound weight loss would be healthier, we might still aim for the original target because it's anchored in our minds. In the realm of real estate, anchoring bias can significantly impact buying decisions. A property listed at a high initial price may lead potential buyers to perceive subsequent price reductions as bargains, even if the adjusted price still exceeds the property's market value. This perception can prompt buyers to act quickly, fearing they might miss out on a deal. The anchoring effect is not just a modern phenomenon. It has deep roots in human psychology. Our brains are wired to rely on initial information as a reference point, especially when faced with uncertainty. This reliance can be beneficial in some situations, allowing for quick decision-making. However, it can also lead to flawed judgments when the anchor is arbitrary or irrelevant. One classic study demonstrating anchoring bias involved participants spinning a wheel with numbers ranging from 0 to 100. After the spin, they were asked whether the percentage of African countries in the United Nations was higher or lower than the number they landed on. Then, they were asked to estimate the actual percentage. The results showed that participants' estimates were significantly influenced by the random number they received, highlighting how arbitrary anchors can sway our judgments. To mitigate the effects of anchoring bias, it's essential to be aware of its presence. When making decisions, especially significant ones, take a step back and consider multiple perspectives. Seek out additional information and challenge initial assumptions. For instance, in negotiations, research market rates and be prepared to justify your expectations with data rather than accepting the first offer as a baseline. In everyday situations, questioning the source and relevance of the initial information can help. If you're shopping and encounter a discounted item, consider whether the original price was inflated to create the illusion of a bargain. By critically evaluating the anchor, you can make more informed choices. Anchoring bias also underscores the importance of setting appropriate reference points. When setting personal goals or evaluating options, ensure that your initial benchmarks are based on accurate and relevant information. This approach can lead to better outcomes and reduce the likelihood of being swayed by arbitrary anchors. In conclusion, anchoring bias is a powerful cognitive phenomenon that influences our decisions and perceptions in various aspects of life. By recognizing its presence and actively challenging initial reference points, we can make more rational and informed choices. Awareness and critical thinking are key tools in overcoming the subtle yet pervasive effects of anchoring bias. Imagine you're at a grocery store, deciding between two brands of yogurt. One is labeled 80% fat-free, while the other reads, contains 20% fat. Both convey the same information, yet the first seems more appealing. This subtle difference in presentation influences your choice, illustrating the framing effect, a cognitive bias where people react differently to the same information depending on how it's presented. The framing effect plays a significant role in our daily decisions. For instance, consider a medical scenario. A doctor tells a patient that a surgery has a 90% survival rate. The patient feels optimistic and consents to the procedure. However, if the doctor says there's a 10% mortality rate, the same patient might hesitate, despite the statistics being identical. The way information is framed, highlighting positive or negative aspects, can significantly sway our perceptions and choices. This bias isn't limited to health decisions. In marketing, companies often frame prices to make deals seem more attractive. A product priced at $50 with a $10 discount might seem like a better deal than one simply priced at $40, even though the final cost is the same. The initial higher price sets a reference point, making the discount feel like a gain. Political communication also leverages framing. Policies can be described in ways that emphasize benefits or drawbacks, influencing public opinion. For example, describing a tax plan as relief for hard-working families frames it positively, while calling it a burden on the middle class frames it negatively. Both descriptions might refer to the same policy, but the framing affects how it's perceived. The framing effect extends to legal contexts as well. In courtrooms, the way evidence is presented can influence jurors' decisions. A defense attorney might describe a defendant's actions as self-defense, while the prosecution frames them as premeditated assault. The framing shapes the narrative and can sway the verdict. Understanding the framing effect is crucial because it reveals how our decisions can be manipulated by presentation rather than content. Being aware of this bias allows us to critically evaluate information and make more informed choices. For instance, when confronted with statistics, it's helpful to consider both positive and negative framings to get a balanced view. To mitigate the framing effect, one strategy is to reframe information in multiple ways. If a news article presents a statistic highlighting a benefit, seek out the corresponding drawback and vice versa. This approach helps in understanding the full picture and reduces the influence of biased framing. Another method is to focus on the underlying data rather than the presentation. By analyzing the raw numbers and considering the context, we can make decisions based on facts rather than emotional responses to framing. In conclusion, the framing effect is a powerful cognitive bias that affects our perceptions and decisions across various aspects of life. By recognizing and understanding this bias, we can strive to make choices that are more rational and less influenced by the way information is presented. Imagine watching a thrilling football match where your team clinches victory in the final minutes. As you celebrate, you might find yourself thinking, "I knew they were going to win all along." This sentiment, while common, is a classic example of hindsight bias, a cognitive distortion where outcomes seem obvious after they've occurred, even if they were unpredictable beforehand. Hindsight bias, often encapsulated by the phrase "I knew it all along," affects our perception of past events. Once an outcome is known, we tend to believe we predicted it accurately, even if we had no basis for such a prediction. This bias isn't just a quirk of memory. It influences how we learn from experiences, assess risks, and make future decisions. Consider the 2008 financial crisis. Before the collapse, few anticipated the extent of the economic downturn. Yet, after the fact, many claimed they saw it coming. This retrospective certainty can hinder our ability to analyze events objectively, as we reconstruct memories to align with known outcomes. Memory distortion plays a significant role in hindsight bias. Our memories aren't perfect recordings. They're reconstructive processes influenced by current knowledge, beliefs, and emotions. When recalling past events, we often fill in gaps with information consistent with what we now know, leading to altered or false memories. In the realm of medicine, hindsight bias can have serious implications. A doctor might retrospectively believe that a diagnosis was evident, even if it wasn't at the time. This can lead to overconfidence, reduced vigilance, and potential misdiagnoses in the future. Recognizing the uncertainty inherent in medical decisions is crucial to avoid such pitfalls. Legal proceedings are also susceptible. Jurors, upon learning the outcome of a case, might believe the verdict was obvious, affecting their judgment and potentially leading to unjust conclusions. Ensuring that jurors understand the complexity and uncertainty of cases is vital for fair trials. Education isn't immune either. Students might believe they understood a concept all along after receiving the correct answer, leading to overconfidence and reduced motivation to study. Educators need to emphasize the learning process and the value of grappling with uncertainty to foster deeper understanding. Hindsight bias also affects personal relationships. After a breakup, individuals might claim they saw the signs all along, even if they were oblivious at the time. This reconstructed narrative can influence how they approach future relationships, sometimes leading to undue caution or misplaced blame. In the business world, leaders might retrospectively believe that a successful strategy was a foregone conclusion, discounting the risks and uncertainties involved. This can lead to overconfidence in future ventures and a lack of preparedness for potential challenges. Combating hindsight bias requires conscious effort. One effective strategy is to document predictions and reasoning before outcomes are known. This creates a record that can be compared to actual results, providing a reality check against distorted recollections. Encouraging a culture that acknowledges uncertainty and values learning from mistakes can also mitigate the effects of hindsight bias. By fostering environments where questioning and critical thinking are encouraged, individuals and organizations can better navigate complex situations. In conclusion, hindsight bias and memory distortion are pervasive cognitive phenomena that shape our perceptions of the past and influence future decisions. By recognizing these biases and implementing strategies to counteract them, we can cultivate more accurate memories, make better informed choices, and foster environments that value learning and growth. Imagine you're watching a thrilling football match where your team clinches victory in the final minutes. As you celebrate, you might find yourself thinking, "I knew they were going to win all along." This sentiment, while common, is a classic example of hindsight bias, a cognitive distortion where outcomes seem obvious after they've occurred, even if they were unpredictable beforehand. Hindsight bias, often encapsulated by the phrase, "I knew it all along," affects our perception of past events. Once an outcome is known, we tend to believe we predicted it accurately, even if we had no basis for such a prediction. This bias isn't just a quirk of memory. It influences how we learn from experiences, assess risks, and make future decisions. Consider the 2008 financial crisis. Before the collapse, few anticipated the extent of the economic downturn. Yet, after the fact, many claimed they saw it coming. This retrospective certainty can hinder our ability to analyze events objectively as we reconstruct memories to align with known outcomes. Memory distortion plays a significant role in hindsight bias. Our memories aren't perfect recordings. They're reconstructive processes influenced by current knowledge, beliefs, and emotions. When recalling past events, we often fill in gaps with information consistent with what we now know, leading to altered or false memories. In the realm of medicine, hindsight bias can have serious implications. A doctor might retrospectively believe that a diagnosis was evident, even if it wasn't at the time. This can lead to overconfidence, reduced vigilance, and potential misdiagnoses in the future. Recognizing the uncertainty inherent in medical decisions is crucial to avoid such pitfalls. Legal proceedings are also susceptible. Jurors, upon learning the outcome of a case, might believe the verdict was obvious, affecting their judgment and potentially leading to unjust conclusions. Ensuring that jurors understand the complexity and uncertainty of cases is vital for fair trials. Education isn't immune either. Students might believe they understood a concept all along after receiving the correct answer, leading to overconfidence and reduced motivation to study. Educators need to emphasize the learning process and the value of grappling with uncertainty to foster deeper understanding. Hindsight bias also affects personal relationships. After a breakup, individuals might claim they saw the signs all along, even if they were oblivious at the time. This reconstructed narrative can influence how they approach future relationships, sometimes leading to undue caution or misplaced blame. In the business world, leaders might retrospectively believe that a successful strategy was a foregone conclusion, discounting the risks and uncertainties involved. This can lead to overconfidence in future ventures and a lack of preparedness for potential challenges. Combating hindsight bias requires conscious effort. One effective strategy is to document predictions and reasoning before outcomes are known. This creates a record that can be compared to actual results, providing a reality check against distorted recollections. Encouraging a culture that acknowledges uncertainty and values learning from mistakes can also mitigate the effects of hindsight bias. By fostering environments where questioning and critical thinking are encouraged, individuals and organizations can better navigate complex situations. In conclusion, Hindsight bias and memory distortion are pervasive cognitive phenomena that shape our perceptions of the past and influence future decisions. By recognizing these biases and implementing strategies to counteract them, we can cultivate more accurate memories, make better informed choices, and foster environments that value learning and growth. Imagine you're at a party and someone introduces you to Sarah. She's wearing thick glasses, has a stack of books under her arm, and speaks in a soft, measured tone. Instantly you think, she must be a librarian. But is that conclusion based on statistical likelihood or on how closely Sarah matches your mental image of a librarian? This snap judgment exemplifies the representativeness heuristic, a mental shortcut where we assess the probability of an event or the nature of a person based on how closely they resemble a prototype we have in mind. The representativeness heuristic is a cognitive bias that leads us to make judgments based on similarity to a stereotype rather than on actual statistical probability. It's a tool our brains use to simplify decision-making, especially under uncertainty. While it can be helpful in some contexts, it often leads to errors in reasoning and judgment. Consider the classic example from psychology, the Linda problem. Participants are given a description of Linda, who is said to be deeply concerned with issues of discrimination and social justice. They're then asked which is more probable, that Linda is a bank teller or that she's a bank teller and active in the feminist movement. Many choose the latter, even though the probability of two events occurring together, being a bank teller and a feminist, is always less than or equal to the probability of either one occurring alone. This error arises because Linda's description aligns more closely with the stereotype of a feminist than with that of a bank teller. This heuristic doesn't just influence our perceptions of people, it affects various aspects of our lives. In hiring decisions, for instance, employers might favor candidates who fit the typical mold for a role, potentially overlooking more qualified individuals who don't match the stereotype. A study highlighted how people often judge others based on superficial traits. For example, someone with tattoos might be perceived as rebellious or unprofessional, even if they're highly competent and experienced. In the legal system, the representativeness heuristic can have serious consequences. Jurors might be swayed by how closely a defendant fits their mental image of a criminal, rather than by the evidence presented. This bias can lead to unjust outcomes, especially when stereotypes about race, gender, or socioeconomic status come into play. Healthcare professionals are not immune to this bias either. Doctors might diagnose a patient based on how closely their symptoms match a common illness, potentially missing rarer conditions. This reliance on prototypical presentations can delay accurate diagnoses and appropriate treatments. The representativeness heuristic also plays a role in financial decisions. Investors might assume that a company with a charismatic CEO and a sleek marketing campaign is a good investment, even if its financials are shaky. They're influenced by how well the company fits their prototype of a successful business, rather than by objective analysis. So, why do we rely on this heuristic? Our brains are wired to seek patterns and make quick judgments to navigate the complex world efficiently. Categorizing information based on similarity helps us make rapid decisions without expending excessive cognitive resources. However, this shortcut often leads us to ignore base rate information. the actual statistical likelihood of events. To counteract the representativeness heuristic, it's essential to be aware of its influence on our thinking. One effective strategy is to focus on base rate information. For instance, in the earlier example with Sarah, consider the actual number of librarians compared to other professions. Statistically, it's more probable that someone is not a librarian, regardless of their appearance or demeanor. Another approach is to question our assumptions actively. When making judgments, ask yourself whether your conclusion is based on objective evidence or on how well someone or something fits a stereotype. This reflective practice can help mitigate the impact of the heuristic. In conclusion, while the representativeness heuristic serves as a mental shortcut to simplify decision-making, it often leads to biased judgments and errors. By recognizing its influence and consciously focusing on statistical realities and objective evidence, we can make more accurate and fair assessments in various aspects of our lives. Imagine you're planning a vacation and fixate on the idea that sunny weather will make or break your trip. You choose a destination known for its sunshine, believing this single factor will ensure your happiness. Upon arrival, the weather is perfect, but the hotel service is poor. The food doesn't suit your taste, and the activities are underwhelming. Despite the sunny skies, you're disappointed. This scenario illustrates the focusing effect, a cognitive bias where we place too much importance on one aspect of an event, neglecting other relevant factors. The focusing effect leads us to overemphasize certain elements while ignoring others, skewing our perception and decision-making. In the vacation example, the emphasis on weather overshadowed considerations like accommodation quality, cuisine, and available activities. This narrow focus can result in choices that don't align with our overall satisfaction. Similarly, the affect heuristic influences our decisions by relying on our emotions. When faced with complex choices, we often substitute difficult questions with simpler ones, guided by our feelings. For instance, if you're considering investing in a new business venture, you might rely on your positive feelings about the charismatic entrepreneur leading the project, rather than thoroughly analyzing the business plan and market conditions. This emotional shortcut can lead to suboptimal decisions. Both the focusing effect and affect heuristic demonstrate how our cognitive processes can be influenced by limited attention and emotional responses. These biases can impact various aspects of life, from personal relationships to professional decisions. Consider the case of purchasing a car. A buyer might focus solely on the vehicle's fuel efficiency, neglecting other important factors like safety features, maintenance costs, and comfort. This narrow focus can lead to dissatisfaction if the car doesn't meet other needs, despite its excellent gas mileage. In the realm of public policy, the focusing effect can lead to disproportionate responses to specific issues. For example, after a high-profile incident of food contamination, there might be an intense focus on food safety regulations, while other pressing public health concerns, such as chronic disease prevention, receive less attention. This misallocation of resources stems from the overemphasis on a single, emotionally charged event. The affect heuristic also plays a role in public perception and policy. When people feel positively about a technology, like renewable energy, they may underestimate its risks and overestimate its benefits. Conversely, if they feel negatively about a technology, such as nuclear power, they might overstate its dangers and dismiss its advantages. These emotional responses can shape public opinion and influence policy decisions, sometimes at odds with scientific evidence. In marketing, companies often exploit these biases to influence consumer behavior. Advertisements might highlight a single appealing feature of a product, like its sleek design, prompting consumers to overlook other important aspects, such as functionality or durability. Emotional appeals in advertising tap into the affect heuristic, encouraging purchases based on feelings rather than rational evaluation. To mitigate the effects of these biases, it's important to adopt strategies that promote more balanced decision-making. One approach is to consciously broaden your focus, considering multiple factors before making a choice. In the vacation planning example, this means evaluating not just the weather, but also accommodations, activities, and cultural experiences. Another strategy is to be aware of your emotional responses and question whether they're influencing your decisions. When you notice a strong emotional reaction to a person, product, or idea, take a step back and assess whether your feelings are justified by the facts. Seeking out objective information and diverse perspectives can help counteract the influence of the affect heuristic. In professional settings, decision-making processes can be structured to reduce these biases. Implementing checklists that require consideration of various factors can prevent overemphasis on a single aspect. Encouraging team discussions and soliciting input from individuals with different viewpoints can also help balance emotional responses and narrow focuses. Educating oneself about cognitive biases is a crucial step in recognizing and addressing them. Understanding that our minds are prone to these shortcuts allows us to be more vigilant and deliberate in our thinking. By acknowledging the presence of the focusing effect and affect heuristic, we can strive to make decisions that are more comprehensive and less influenced by limited attention or emotional reactions. Imagine you're at a grocery store, faced with two brands of cereal. One is a brand you've seen advertised repeatedly, while the other is unfamiliar. Without much thought, you reach for the familiar brand, even if it's slightly more expensive. This instinctive choice exemplifies the familiarity heuristic, a mental shortcut where we prefer what we recognize over the unknown. The familiarity heuristic operates on the principle that familiar options are perceived as safer or better, regardless of objective evidence. This bias can influence various aspects of our lives, from consumer behavior to decision-making in high-stakes situations. For instance, investors might favor domestic companies over foreign ones, not because of better performance, but due to a sense of familiarity. This preference isn't inherently negative. It can expedite decision-making and reduce cognitive load. However, it can also lead to suboptimal choices. Relying solely on familiarity may cause us to overlook superior alternatives simply because they are less known. Now consider the placebo effect, a phenomenon where a person experiences real improvements in health after receiving a treatment with no therapeutic value, simply because they believe it's effective. For example, someone might report reduced pain after taking a sugar pill they believe is a painkiller. This effect underscores the powerful connection between mind and body. Conversely, the nocebo effect occurs when negative expectations lead to adverse outcomes. If a patient anticipates side effects from a medication, they might experience those symptoms, even if the treatment is inert. This illustrates how our beliefs and expectations can manifest physically, influencing our health outcomes. Both placebo and nocebo effects highlight the significant role of perception in our experiences. They demonstrate that our expectations can shape reality, for better or worse. This interplay between mind and body is a testament to the complexity of human psychology. The familiarity heuristic can intersect with these effects in intriguing ways. For instance, a patient might respond better to a treatment from a well-known brand due to their trust and familiarity with it, enhancing the placebo effect. Conversely, unfamiliar treatments might trigger skepticism, potentially leading to a nocebo response. Understanding these concepts is crucial, especially in healthcare and marketing. Clinicians can harness the placebo effect by fostering positive expectations, while being mindful of the nocebo effect by carefully communicating potential side effects. Marketers can leverage the familiarity heuristic to build brand loyalty, but must also recognize the ethical implications of manipulating consumer behavior. In our daily lives, being aware of these biases can lead to more informed decisions. Recognizing when we're favoring familiarity over quality, or when our expectations might be influencing our experiences, empowers us to make choices aligned with our best interests. In conclusion, the familiarity heuristic and placebo-nocebo effects reveal the profound impact of perception on our decisions and experiences. By acknowledging and understanding these psychological phenomena, we can navigate our world with greater awareness and intentionality. Imagine you're reading your daily horoscope and it says, "You have a deep need for others to like and admire you, yet you tend to be critical of yourself. While you have some weaknesses, you're generally able to compensate for them." You pause, reflecting on how accurately this seems to describe you. But here's the twist. This exact statement has been given to countless individuals, all of whom felt it uniquely applied to them. This phenomenon is known as the Forer effect, also referred to as the Barnum effect. The Forer effect is a psychological phenomenon where individuals believe that vague general statements about personality are highly accurate for them personally, even though these statements could apply to many people. This effect was first demonstrated by psychologist Bertram R. Forer in 1948. In his experiment, Forer gave his students a personality test and then provided each with the same generic personality description compiled from various horoscopes. Despite the uniformity, students rated the accuracy of the description as 4.26 out of 5 on average, believing it was tailored specifically to them. The Barnum effect, named after showman P.T. Barnum, who was known for saying, "We've got something for everyone," operates on a similar principle. It describes the tendency of people to accept general or vague statements as being uniquely applicable to themselves. These effects are commonly exploited in astrology, fortune-telling, and certain personality tests, where broad statements are perceived as highly accurate personal insights. Consider the statement, "You have a great deal of unused capacity, which you have not turned to your advantage." This could apply to almost anyone, yet many would interpret it as a precise reflection of their personal experience. The key lies in the human desire for affirmation and self-understanding, leading individuals to find meaning in statements that are, in reality, universally applicable. These effects are not limited to entertainment or pseudoscience. They have implications in various fields, including marketing, psychology, and even criminal profiling. For instance, in marketing, advertisers craft messages that are broad enough to appeal to a wide audience but personalized enough to make each individual feel uniquely targeted. Phrases like, "This product is just what you've been looking for," tap into the Barnum effect, making consumers more likely to engage with the product. In psychology, awareness of these effects is crucial for both practitioners and clients. Therapists must be cautious not to provide feedback that is so general that it could apply to anyone, as this can lead to false validation and hinder genuine self-discovery. Clients, on the other hand, should be encouraged to critically evaluate the feedback they receive, discerning between truly personalized insights and generic statements. The Forer and Barnum effects also highlight the importance of critical thinking and skepticism. In an era where information is abundant and easily accessible, individuals must be vigilant in assessing the validity of the content they consume. Recognizing the allure of personalized yet vague statements can help prevent the acceptance of misinformation and promote more informed decision-making. Moreover, these effects underscore the complexity of human cognition and the ways in which our minds seek patterns and meaning. They reveal our susceptibility to cognitive biases and the need for ongoing self-awareness. By understanding these psychological phenomena, we can better navigate the myriad of messages we encounter daily, from horoscopes to advertisements, and make choices that are truly aligned with our individual needs and values. In conclusion, the Forer and Barnum effects demonstrate how easily we can be persuaded by statements that seem personal but are, in fact, broadly applicable. By cultivating critical thinking skills and a healthy dose of skepticism, we can guard against these cognitive biases and make more authentic, informed decisions in our personal and professional lives. Imagine you're attending a series of job interviews. The first candidate impresses you with their confidence and articulate responses. As the day progresses, you meet several more applicants, but none seem to match the initial impact of the first. Later, when reflecting on the interviews, you find yourself favoring the first candidate, even though others had comparable qualifications. This scenario illustrates the primacy effect, where information presented earlier is remembered more vividly and influences our judgments more strongly. Now, consider a different situation. You're watching a talent show, and the last performer delivers a stunning act that leaves the audience in awe. Despite earlier performances being equally commendable, the final act lingers in your memory, swaying your opinion in their favor. This is an example of the recency bias, where the most recently presented information dominates our recall and decision-making. Both the primacy effect and recency bias are components of the serial position effect, a psychological phenomenon describing how the position of information in a sequence affects our memory. Typically, items at the beginning, primacy, and end, recency, of a list are remembered better than those in the middle. This pattern has been extensively studied in cognitive psychology, highlighting the limitations and tendencies of human memory. The primacy effect is often attributed to the greater amount of attention and rehearsal that initial information receives. When we encounter new information, we tend to process and encode it into our long-term memory more effectively. This is why first impressions are so influential. The initial information we receive about a person or situation sets the tone for our subsequent perceptions. In contrast, the recency bias is linked to the freshness of information in our short-term memory. Recent events or data points are more accessible and can disproportionately influence our judgments, especially when decisions are made shortly after the information is presented. This bias can lead us to overemphasize recent experiences while neglecting earlier, potentially more relevant information. These cognitive biases have practical implications across various domains. In the workplace, performance evaluations can be skewed by recency bias, with managers placing undue weight on an employee's recent performance rather than considering their overall contributions. This can result in unfair assessments and missed opportunities for recognition or improvement. In education, students might focus more on the beginning or end of a lecture, neglecting the material presented in the middle. Educators can mitigate this by structuring lessons to re-emphasize key points throughout, and by engaging students consistently to maintain attention. In the realm of marketing and advertising, companies often leverage these biases to their advantage. By ensuring their products are the first or last seen in a sequence, be it in a commercial, on a shelf, or in a list, they increase the likelihood of consumer recall and preference. Imagine you're attending a conference, and during a series of presentations, one speaker uses vibrant visuals and an unconventional approach. Later, when recalling the event, that particular presentation stands out vividly in your memory, while the others blur together. This phenomenon exemplifies the von Restorff effect, also known as the isolation effect. It suggests that when multiple similar items are presented, the one that differs significantly is more likely to be remembered. The von Restorff effect was first identified by German psychologist Hedwig von Restorff in 1933. In her experiments, participants were presented with lists of items where one item was distinct in some way, perhaps in color, size, or meaning. The results consistently showed that the unique item was more likely to be recalled than the others. This effect underscores the importance of distinctiveness in memory retention. In practical terms, this means that making information stand out can enhance its memorability. For instance, in educational settings, teachers might highlight key concepts using different colors or fonts to ensure students remember them. In marketing, brands often design logos or advertisements that break the mold to capture consumer attention. The underlying principle is that our brains are wired to notice and remember anomalies amidst uniformity. However, while distinctiveness can aid memory, our recollections are not infallible. Enter the misinformation effect, a cognitive phenomenon where a person's memory of an event becomes less accurate due to post-event information. This effect illustrates how our memories can be influenced, distorted, or even fabricated by misleading information encountered after the fact. Renowned psychologist Elizabeth Loftus conducted seminal research in this area. In one study, participants watched a video of a car accident. Later, they were asked questions about the event, with some questions containing misleading information. For example, when asked, how fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other? Participants estimated higher speeds and were more likely to report seeing broken glass, even though there was none, compared to those asked, how fast were the cars going when they hit each other? This demonstrates how subtle changes in wording can implant false memories. The misinformation effect has profound implications, especially in legal contexts. Eyewitness testimonies can be unreliable, as memories can be altered by leading questions, media coverage, or discussions with others. This raises concerns about the accuracy of recollections and the potential for wrongful convictions based on distorted memories. Moreover, in our digital age, the spread of misinformation through social media and other platforms can exacerbate this effect. People might read or hear incorrect details about an event, which then become integrated into their memories, leading them to believe they witnessed or experienced something that never occurred. Understanding both the von Restorff and misinformation effects highlights the complexities of human memory. While distinctiveness can enhance recall, our memories are also susceptible to distortion. This duality emphasizes the need for critical thinking and skepticism, especially when recalling events or consuming information. To mitigate the misinformation effect, it's essential to verify information from multiple credible sources and be cautious of leading questions or suggestive language. In educational and professional settings, fostering an environment that encourages questioning and critical analysis can help individuals discern fact from fiction. In conclusion, the von Restorff effect teaches us about the power of distinctiveness in memory retention, while the misinformation effect warns us of the vulnerabilities in our recollections. By being aware of these cognitive phenomena, we can better navigate the complexities of memory and information in our daily lives. Imagine you're reminiscing with a friend about a childhood event, vividly recalling a specific moment that left a lasting impression. However, your friend insists that the event never happened, or at least not in the way you remember. This discrepancy leads to confusion and self-doubt. Such experiences highlight the complexities of human memory and cognition, particularly phenomena like false memory syndrome and the curse of knowledge. False memory syndrome refers to a condition where an individual's identity and interpersonal relationships are influenced by memories of events that never actually occurred. These false memories are often vivid and emotionally charged, making them indistinguishable from real memories. The syndrome gained attention in the 1990s, particularly in cases involving recovered memories of childhood abuse during therapy sessions. Critics argue that certain therapeutic techniques, such as hypnosis or guided imagery, can inadvertently implant false memories, leading individuals to believe in events that never happened. The implications of false memory syndrome are profound, especially in legal contexts. Eyewitness testimonies can be unreliable, as memories are susceptible to distortion over time and can be influenced by external factors. For instance, the wording of questions posed by investigators can alter a witness's recollection of an event. This phenomenon, known as the misinformation effect, demonstrates how easily memories can be manipulated, leading to false convictions or the misremembering of critical details. On the other hand, the curse of knowledge is a cognitive bias where individuals, once they have acquired knowledge, find it challenging to imagine what it's like not to possess that knowledge. This bias can hinder effective communication, as experts may struggle to convey information in a way that's accessible to novices. For example, a seasoned programmer might find it difficult to teach coding basics to a beginner, inadvertently assuming that certain concepts are universally understood. The curse of knowledge can have significant consequences in educational settings. Teachers may overestimate students' prior knowledge, leading to lessons that are too advanced or lacking in necessary foundational information. In business, professionals might present ideas or strategies without adequately explaining the rationale, assuming that their audience shares the same level of understanding. This disconnect can result in misunderstandings, reduced engagement, and ineffective decision-making. Both false memory syndrome and the curse of knowledge underscore the fallibility of human cognition. Our memories are not perfect recordings of events, but are reconstructive, influenced by various factors such as emotions, suggestions, and time. Similarly, our ability to communicate effectively is often impeded by our own knowledge, making it difficult to relate to those with different levels of understanding. To mitigate the effects of false memory syndrome, it's essential to approach memories with a healthy degree of skepticism, especially when they resurface after long periods or under suggestive circumstances. Corroborating evidence, such as photographs or testimonies from others, can help validate memories. In legal contexts, ensuring that investigative techniques are non-leading and that witnesses are not exposed to misleading information is crucial. Addressing the curse of knowledge requires conscious effort. Experts should strive to simplify their explanations, avoid jargon, and seek feedback to ensure their message is understood. Empathy plays a vital role. By putting oneself in the learner's shoes, communicators can better tailor their messages to the audience's needs. In conclusion, understanding and acknowledging the limitations of our memory and communication abilities are vital steps toward improving interpersonal relationships, education, and decision-making processes. By being aware of phenomena like false memory syndrome and the curse of knowledge, we can take proactive measures to ensure accuracy in our recollections and clarity in our communications. Imagine you're participating in a health study where researchers ask you to recall your dietary habits from the past year. You try to remember, but the details are fuzzy. Perhaps you overestimate your intake of healthy foods or forget about occasional indulgences. This scenario illustrates recall bias, a common issue in research that relies on participants' memory of past events. Recall bias occurs when individuals do not accurately remember previous experiences or exposures, leading to systematic errors in data collection. This bias is particularly problematic in retrospective studies, where participants are asked to recall behaviors or events after they have occurred. For instance, in studies investigating the link between diet and disease, participants with a particular health condition might recall their past diet differently than healthy individuals, skewing the results. Several factors contribute to recall bias. The passage of time can erode memory, making it challenging to remember specific details. Emotional factors also play a role. Significant or traumatic events may be remembered more vividly, while mundane details fade away. Additionally, individuals may unconsciously modify their recollections to align with current beliefs or to present themselves in a favorable light. To mitigate recall bias, researchers employ various strategies. Utilizing objective data sources, such as medical records or food diaries, can provide more accurate information than relying solely on memory. Designing questionnaires with specific, clear questions helps reduce ambiguity and improve the accuracy of responses. Moreover, conducting prospective studies, where data is collected in real time, can minimize the reliance on memory and reduce the potential for recall bias. Now, Consider another phenomenon. You're watching a movie, and during a scene change, a character's outfit changes colour, but you don't notice. This is an example of change blindness, a perceptual phenomenon where observers fail to notice significant changes in their visual environment. Change blindness highlights the limitations of our visual attention. Our brains are adept at constructing a coherent representation of our surroundings, but they don't process every detail. Instead, they focus on elements deemed important, often missing changes that occur during visual disruptions, such as a cut in a film or a brief obstruction in our line of sight. This phenomenon has been demonstrated in various experiments. In one study, participants watched a video where a person asks for directions. During the interaction, a large object passes between the participant and the individual asking for directions, who is then replaced by another person. Surprisingly, many participants fail to notice the switch, illustrating how change blindness can occur even in face-to-face interactions. Change blindness has practical implications in everyday life. For example, drivers may fail to notice changes in traffic signals or the sudden appearance of pedestrians, leading to accidents. In security settings, personnel might overlook alterations in surveillance footage, potentially missing critical events. Understanding change blindness underscores the importance of designing environments and systems that account for human perceptual limitations. Both recall bias and change blindness reveal the fallibility of human memory and perception. They remind us that our recollections and observations are not always reliable, influenced by various cognitive processes and limitations. Recognizing these phenomena is crucial, not only in research and safety-critical professions, but also in our daily interactions and decision-making. To counteract these biases, awareness is the first step. Being mindful of the potential for memory distortion can prompt us to seek objective evidence when recalling past events. In situations requiring keen observation, such as driving or monitoring security footage, implementing checklists or automated alerts can help compensate for our perceptual blind spots. In conclusion, while our cognitive abilities are remarkable, they are not infallible. Recall bias and change blindness serve as reminders of the importance of critical thinking, objective data, and system designs that accommodate human limitations. By acknowledging and addressing these biases, we can improve the accuracy of research, enhance safety, and make more informed decisions in our daily lives.